Namaskaram. So once again, as usual, we will start with 3 chants of Om, and the second half of the Shanti mantra that we started in the first session. So what we will do is we will deepen our practice every day as we go forward. As you remember, the first day we talked about what is the goal of human life, and the second day we said what is the direction to go in order to achieve that goal. So we will continue that, and now we will talk about that journey itself. So we know what is the goal, which direction to go in the for the goal. It's more like a GPS or a map. Now that we know both of these things, we will now start talking about how to actually make this approach. So that is essentially what we will do. In order to be able to do that, whatever practice we are doing, we will try to deepen them in the sense that we will do it with much more involvement each day. Not that we have not been involved before, but whatever involvement we had yesterday, we will have even more involvement today, and tomorrow we will try to beat that also. And there is no upper limit at all. So it's not like 100% is the maximum. So we keep going to beating ourselves. And that is the main competition that we have to always undertake, whether it is with spirituality or even worldly aspects. It's only us we have to compete with, not anybody else. Because the way we are structured at the other levels, other than just the soul alone, is very different for each of us. And so by comparing with others, we are making a very big mistake, because the kind of external capabilities that each one of us has built in is very different. But the internal capability, all of us can build up to the huge potentials, and there is no maximum, as I said, and every one of us has the equal capability to keep increasing if only we are committed towards that and we keep working towards it, and which is what we will do even with this Aum chant that we always start with. We will clearly observe as the sound is made, because the only sound we are making is ah. First we take a very deep inhalation and then open our mouth as wide as possible and only keep saying ah as we steadily keep closing the mouth slowly, gradually, and as it closes a little bit, the ah will automatically transform into oo, and once the lips touch each other, it will automatically transform into and then we have to observe the lower parts of the body as we are saying ah, and as it becomes oo, we have to observe the middle parts of the body, and as it becomes we observe the top part of the body. And we will also, as we keep deepening our practice, now I'm saying because these are things that I experience, so I'm just sharing with you. Absolutely no issue if you don't observe any of these things. It doesn't happen to everybody all the time. It happens over time. So what typically happens is that the lower portion is associated with creativity. So when you're saying ah, that creative nature of ourselves, how creative we are, how inventive we are, that ability to make new things for people, make new concepts for people, which can be useful for everybody around us apart from ourselves, that creativity is what is associated with that ah. So you can feel your creative powers, what we call as Ichcha Shakti. Then as we go into oo, then we recognize the preservative power of ours, how to maintain, how to sustain the things. Because once we create something like our child, for example, all of us have children, so once we create our child, it's not the end of the game. In fact, that's the beginning of the game. We have to facilitate their growth and become as good a facilitator as possible. So that is essentially the middle portion of the body, which is essentially maintaining us. That's what our lungs are doing, that's what our heart is doing in the physical body. But even in the subtle body, which is the physiological and the psychological body, at that level also we are essentially maintaining whatever we have created. So that is the preserving aspect that we come across in the middle when we are saying oo. And then once the lips touch each other and we are saying what happens is we are looking at the recycling aspect, because we should not get too attached to what we have created, because our ability to continue creating is so awesome, and whatever we have created we can recreate in a better way. That's why creation and recreation is usually used as a word for entertainment, but that is what this already is. This is a play, this is a game, this is a movie, this is a drama that we are part of with full involvement. We are all great Oscar capable actors, and so we are giving our best performances. And when we are giving our best performances, it's not just our audience which is enjoying it, we ourselves who are performing are also enjoying it. And which means that every time we should be able to, in our next movie, make it even better, or whatever we have created, if we can keep refining it more and more, all the better. So that is essentially what happens in the recycling mode. The word destruction, dissolution, demolition might sound very harsh, but essentially that's what is happening. It's like saying that creation is like an inhalation, preservation is like retaining the breath, and the dissolution is exhaling. It's not like saying, no, I'm scared of destruction, demolition, dissolution, I will not do it. It's like saying, I will not exhale. Then you will be stuck up with your stale air, you will not be recycling it. So you have to understand the equal importance of all these three aspects. None of them are in a hierarchy. One is not superior to other. And that's essentially why the gods that we have created, whether it is Brahma along with his power of Saraswati, the creative power, or the sustaining power, which is Lakshmi of Vishnu, and then the destructive power, which is of Kali, Durga, the power of Shivam. So essentially all of these are operating within us, what we call as the Ichcha Shakti or willpower, Kriya Shakti or the power of action, and Jnana Shakti or the power of knowledge and wisdom. So Ichcha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Aum, Aum Shakti, Aum Shakti, Aum Shakti, Aum. We typically sing this song. Today being Friday is very powerful for the goddess. So it's good that this just came across in the context. So as we chant this Aum, all these things we will observe today. I already told you, A is the ending sound of Brahma, and U is the ending sound of Vishnu, and is the ending sound of Shivam. So essentially you are activating your willpower, the power to act, and the power to dissolve, and which is essentially a power of wisdom, which is without wisdom we will not recycle. We'll get attached to things already that we have created and we want to keep it as it is. But no, all these things have to grow further and become even better. So the attachment is not a great thing. Many people confuse attachment with love, but love is very different from attachment. Love cannot happen without detachment. So essentially what we are saying is that we are not possessive, but we are essentially embracing in an all-inclusivity. We feel what the other person whom we love feels, so that we are one with them. Physically, we will never be able to be one, whoever it is, however close it might be. Physically, we can never be close. We were close in inside our mother's womb for 9 months. That is when we were one. But as we kept moving, physically we have distanced ourselves, because physically we have boundaries, as I already told you, length, breadth, height, and weight. But in terms of the subtle or causal natures, which is our more refined natures, there is no boundary. There is a lot of overlap between you, me, and any one of our family members or relatives or friends, or sometimes even strangers. So there's a lot of overlap that is happening, and that's where these emotions that we hold in great esteem, like love, etc., happen more deeply at those levels rather than at the physical level alone. So having recognized the beautiful significance of this, and also we talked one more level of this A, U, and is the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. So you don't need to confuse yourself with so many different interpretations. Right now, because of the short duration of this session of 30 minutes, we are chanting only thrice, But in your free time, whenever you get an opportunity, try to chant it loudly to start with, because that makes you experience the vibrations. Because otherwise, in the beginning stage, it's very difficult to observe these vibrations unless you chant as loudly as you can. But slowly, as you keep going, even with a lower volume chant or even mental chanting, you will be able to recognize these vibrations. So till then, we try to do it with total involvement at the physical level and the intellectual and emotional levels, because all these three at least we already have control over. Life energy is essentially the breath. Later on we will see how to synchronize with, but already to some extent we are doing it, because when we are saying this Aum, we are actually exhaling, and between two Aums we are actually inhaling. So automatically, even though we are not conscious about it, it's happening, and slowly we will see the conscious observation also, that these are also synchronized. In other words, this is also involved, and this we have to do nothing about, because already it is excellent for all of us. It's the only one thing which is there common for everybody, absolutely 100% common for everybody. So there's absolutely nothing to work on this, but that is our real self, and that's what we have to eventually find identity with. So which means that we have to work through all these packaging materials. All these are packaging materials which are making this infinite thing look so small and tiny and finite. One package makes it little smaller, another makes it even smaller. This comes and makes it, because of a tighter packing, it makes it even smaller. It's like crushing a balloon, and then it becomes a very tiny balloon once the physical aspect also is brought in. So now our whole idea is to expand out and see the distance between these things, and to see all these are tools of this guy here, and then therefore we can utilize them in the way that is conducive for this, which means conducive for everybody, because this is same for everybody. So if all these are working for this, if it's working for myself, it is not myself alone, it is ourself. So that is essentially what happens, and so then we don't need to teach people love your neighbor, love your friends, be friendly. All these kinds of things are automatically done once we recognize this is what we are, because then we recognize you are also me, you are also me, everybody is me. So we will not do anything that we will not do to ourselves to others also. So whatever increases our happiness is what we will try to do with others also, to the extent possible, because all these can work only with limitations. These cannot work in an infinite fashion. Only this can work at an infinite fashion. So this is essentially what we are trying to do in this. So in your Aum chantings, when you do it separately later on, you can do a few times, and one time you just think only of that waking, dream, deep sleep, waking, dream, deep sleep, and beyond. When you are taking the in-breath, inhalation between two arms, you think of essentially the Turiya state, what we call, which is the beyond state, beyond waking, dream, and deep sleep. So then another few times then when you are chanting, you can think of the Brahma, Vishnu, Shivam aspect, which again for a few times you think of our own creativity, our own ability to preserve what we have created, and the ability to recycle it. So that aspect also you can think of. So we looked at various ways of looking at it, but you need not think of all of these at the same time. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And essentially the observation also is very important, that the sound originates from our lower part of the body, typically the under part of the belly, and slowly rises. The sound rises and rises and rises. And this is essentially the way all energies rise. And all energies, whether you're talking about so-called negative energies like fear or anger or hatred, jealousy, those as well as the positive, so-called positive energies like love, friendliness, etc. All these are essentially the same energy. You can convert from one to the other. Just like how, for example, there is light shining on my face. Light is an energy, but how is that light coming? Because we are supplying electricity, so electric energy is coming. How is that electricity generated? Through a hydroelectric power, where there is, let's say, water flowing, a motor runs, And so mechanical energy is converted to electrical energy, is converted to light energy, and that is getting recorded through some of the electronic energies that are there in these camera systems. So you see that even in the physical world, it's possible to convert from one energy to another energy. So though people normally call these as negative energies and these as positive energies, it's not good to brand like that, because energy is one thing, and it's just that the way we express it, it turns out to be good or bad. It's just like a knife. A surgeon can use it as a scalpel, chef can use it as a cooking instrument, and a murderer or a criminal can use it to kill people. So it's not that the knife is a bad thing or a good thing. It depends on the identity of the person who is using it. The more we are identified with this, the more so-called positive energies that we will be generating, and the more we can tend to identify with this, because this is limited, this is smaller and smaller, as I said, the balloon, which is a tight package. Then we start thinking, oh, this is only me, that's all not me, I have to protect myself, I have to survive, and all these other environment is giving trouble to me, so I have to protect myself. So that kind of an attitude brings in the so-called transformation of that same so-called positive energy to so-called negative energy. So once we understand how all of these transform, many of the words that we commonly use, especially in a non-professional psychiatric sense of anxieties or disorders or depressions and things like that, there are few cases which are very severe and need to be treated with appropriate medications and professional help, but a vast majority can be handled just by the pure understanding of who we really are and maintaining a certain distance from our body, mind, intellect, etc. The other important thing is, we already saw in the previous episode what is the direction we need to move in towards our goal, which is inwards, not outwards. So then why is it that we are going outwards? So once again, let's look at it from a story perspective. One of the great rishis, he's a guru, has lots of disciples. He was at some point of time, his ashram is in a very remote place, and there's no electricity supply into the ashram, but the street has a few lights, and it was late in the evening, it was quite dark, and the disciples had gone out for some work, and then they were coming back. The guru alone was there. And when they came back, they saw the guru, who was just outside in the street, outside the ashram, just outside, and he was searching on the street for something very frantically. Very unusual for the disciples to see the guru in such an anxious mood, having lost something precious and searching for it. So they asked him what it was, and he told some article that he had lost, and then they said, okay, we will also try to help you, and they also kept on searching. For quite some time they searched, and nobody was able to find it. And then they asked the guru, where did you last see it, or where did you lose it? Then the guru said, I lost it inside the ashram. Then they were like shocked. What's wrong with him? He lost it inside the ashram, but now he's coming and searching for it outside. And then they were like looking at each other and saying, maybe something has gone wrong with the guru. But then the guru laughed and said, you might think I'm foolish for doing this, but that's essentially what we are doing. Because why I am searching outside is because inside there is no light, there is no darkness. It's full of, because there's no electricity, it's dark, and therefore I cannot search there. But here there is light, so I've come outside to search. Even though I know that I lost it inside, I'm still searching outside for it. But that's the same stupid, silly thing that almost 99% of the world is doing, that the real thing, that is our own self, is inside, but we are searching for other things outside. But why does it happen like that? Even though all these intellectual knowledge, it might sound so convincing, and we will feel like we have to change the way we have been doing, but usually we do not change overnight. Why does that happen? If you look at it, it's primarily because we have become too dependent on our sense organs, which is very important. Sense organs are important, but the way they work, we have to just think about it, and not necessary to think about it from being a doctor or whatever, but even from a high school or middle school physics or biology, we know that how these things work. For example, how does the eye create an image? Essentially, the light falls, there's an inverted image on the retina, and then through the optical nerves it goes to the brain, and so, a particular part of the brain compares it with what it has seen before, and essentially we get an idea of what we are seeing. So the eye is can operate if and only if the eyelids are open and the light is coming from outside and going inside. Similarly, the ears can operate only if the air is vibrating with the sounds that are generated either by the talk or by any other machine, whatever, and that vibrating air vibrates our eardrums, and therefore once again the same process of going to the brain and getting compared with what we have heard earlier, and then saying I like this sound or I don't like this sound, those kinds of things. So you see that the eye is focused on the light outside, ear is focused on the sound outside. Similarly, the nose is focused on the smells outside. We are not smelling all the things inside. It would be horrible if we were smelling those things in our excretory system or even in the later stage of our digestive system. Thank God we are not doing that. So essentially, these are all designed by the evolutionary process to be outwards, and that's the right thing to do. Eyes have to look outside only. You can't use these eyes to look inwards. You can't use these ears to hear the sounds inside. And similarly, the smell or the touch, we can feel the things which are outside us. We can't feel our own heart, what is happening, even though it is beating so beautifully, we can't actually feel that vibrations that are happening inside. Similarly, the tongue, the taste, whatever we are tasting is the food which is outside. Our tongue is not able to taste the upper part of the mouth or the teeth, which are all inside us. It has got used to it, so being in touch for all the time, so that becomes like a baseline, and then whatever food we put in, that creates different kinds of reactions. For example, if we eat something which is spicy or hot, what happens is an exothermic reaction between the outer layers of the tongue with a particular constituent ingredient in the chili, for example, which reacts with that, creating an exothermic chemical reaction which creates heat. And that's why the same word hot is used to tell for something with a high temperature, also for something which is extremely spicy, also we say it is very hot. So because it's true, scientifically, chemically also, it's an exothermic reaction, which means it's generating heat, and that's the reason why we experience it in a particular way. But the main point is that all of these sense organs are essentially designed to go outwards towards what are known as the sense objects. So for the eyes, it is light; for the ears, it is the sound; for the nose, it is the smell; for the tongue, it is the taste; and for the skin, it is the touch. And all these objects are all external to us. But for the spiritual process, we have to go inwards, which means we cannot use these tools. We cannot use our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or skin. This has to be done in an internal process where the mind, luckily, which has been giving a lot of trouble to a lot of people, unfortunately, can be used for this purpose. That's where its greatest importance comes in. Similarly, the intellect can be used. Similarly, the life energy can be used. When we use our body for doing it, we cannot use the sense organs, but to some extent we can use our limbs for it by what is known as karma yoga. That means being just devoted to whatever work we are doing. Suppose somebody is a doctor, just being devoted to that medical service. Somebody is a homemaker, just being devoted to taking care of the family and making the best contribution towards them. So that is called as karma yoga. That is one way of reaching it. Through the mind, if you want to do, it's essentially called Bhakti Yoga. You become devoted to the concept of God, which is essentially, we already discussed before, it's ourselves which is imparted into the Vigrahas. So that is Bhakti Yoga. we can do it using our intellect, which is called as Jnana Yoga, which means that we reason out intellectually what is true, what is even truer, what is even truer. There's in our way of understanding things, there is nothing like a binary system of this is all true, this is all false. No, truth is like a ladder, you keep on climbing. We are in one stage, we could be in any one of the runs, somebody could be here, somebody else could be here, but it is an infinite ladder, and we keep on moving from one rung to another rung to another rung. We don't compare, oh, that person is there, I am much better than him, or some other person is over here, so I am much inferior to them. It's not like that. I am in this rung today, can I reach that rung tomorrow? So that is the greater and greater truths that we keep discovering. So that all that kind of knowledge way of analyzing and getting to the truth is essentially done by this, which is called as Jnana Yoga. And this is essentially using the breath, what we call as pranayama. Many different types of pranayama are there. So just by observing the breath and also other asanas and other yogic practices that we do that. All of that together is called as Raja Yoga, because it is like a very kingly kind of way of approaching things. So that is essentially Raja Yoga. So these are the 4 different ways in which you can recognize that this is what you are. All these are tools. Instead of doing each one of them, taking one of them and doing only that, because we have all these faculties, we can actually do at different times certain aspects of each one of these. Rather than getting too deep into any one of them, you are actually trying to utilize all of your faculties towards that goal. And that is what is called as integral yoga, or in our scriptures it is called as Sānkhya Yoga. Sānkhya means integration, bringing together, putting everything together is called Sānkhya, and that Sānkhya Yoga is what our approach will be in the way we are going to progress. Also, we will not say we will give up the body and only think of the mind, or we will give up the mind because it is causing problem for us, we'll think only of the intellect. No, we will use all of these faculties, because whatever resources we have, it should not go a waste, because these have been given to us for a particular reason, and let's use it for the best possible reason, which is essentially to identify who we are, and then we keep going up and up. Sorry for the delaying of the chanting of the Om, so we will do that now, because all of this was essential to understand that this is not just a mechanical thing that we are just saying Om, Om, Om. However, the sound might come out very well, but unless and until we recognize the actual power of this beautiful mantra, so simple, so easy for all of us to do, but having a wonderful impact. It has, there are case histories of people with terrible physical ailments who have been cured only through Om chanting, nothing else. There have been terrible psychiatric patients who have gone through so many psychiatric treatments and kind of so-called given up cases, who have over a 6 months period or so, with just the chanting of Om, they have drastically improved in their mental abilities, the psychological health. So never underestimate the power of simple things, because simple things can be extremely powerful as long as we are committed, trusting it and devoted to it and doing it with total involvement. So that's how we will chant these 3 times of Om and then the Shanti mantra. Swastina Indro Vruddha Shravaha Swastina Starksho Arishta Nemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dhadatu Aum Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
So in this mantra, we are actually invoking various aspects. Swastina Indro Vruddha. We are invoking Indra, who is not a separate god, but is essentially our ability to sense. So the sense organs. So the same sense organs which we said is actually external and is not going to be too useful for the internal purpose has to be also respected and honored. So in our invocations, we are seeing that even those things which may not be directly useful for the spiritual practices, we are offering our prayers to them because their cooperation is needed. If the ear is not cooperating with you, you will not be able to hear what I say. Even if your mind is intended on hearing me, if the ear is not operating properly, it will not be able to hear. So all the cooperation of all these things which see externally, but eventually has, even for our spiritual practice of working internally, they should not become a disturbance. They should not come and create some obstacles in our internal journey. So that internal journey has to be accomplished without any of these external obstacles. That's why Swastina Indro Vruddha Shravaha, because all said and done, these have such great experience because the eye has seen so many different things. Each of our eyes, irrespective of our age, so many things we have seen, so many things our ears have heard, and all of that has been what has been able to accumulate in our memories, because of which we are able to do many great things. So we really respect them in the sense of a Vruddha Shravaha. That means these are like wise old men. So these are all like wise old people who are actually helping us through their experiences. Whatever they have experienced as sights, sounds, etc., they are helping us out. So that is what we are asking for. Swastina Indro Vruddha Shravaha. Swastina Pusha Vishwa Vedaha, where we are respecting the sun, to say that Pusha or sun is nothing but knowledge or wisdom, because it is with the help of the sun that we are able to understand many things, and that is the main or the only source of energy, in fact, for on this particular planet. Any other form of energy is originally from the sun, so it's transformed in various ways and given to us and utilized by us, but essentially that's what it is. So we are looking at Indra or our senses as wise old people who can help us, and similarly we are looking at the sun as something that is a symbol of our wisdom or knowledge, which we have inherited from the great rishis and our own great grandparents, parents, etc., and through our teachers and our gurus, etc. So all that knowledge which is seeping through us is essentially that. Then we are saying Swastinas Tarksho Arishtanemihi. Tarksho is the wind. So the wind is blowing, and the wind has a certain speed, and that speed is also important for us. In whatever we do, we have to have a certain speed of doing things. If you are too slow, then things happen much later than when they were supposed to be done, then they are of no use. See, it's not only what we do, but when we do is also important. So there are certain things have to be done in a timely manner as far as possible, and so that speed is important, and our ability to work as fast as possible is what is we are bowing down to the wind and saying that just like you, how fast you move, I should also be able to do my works in such a fast way. And finally, we are respecting all the gurus in the form of Brihaspati or Jupiter, our wisdom, which is not only the external wisdom which the sun gives, but the internal wisdom that is coming to us. And that we say that Swastino Brihaspatir Dadatu. And by basically talking to our senses, to talking to our knowledge, talking to our speed and talking to our wisdom. Knowledge and wisdom are different from each other. So essentially talking to all of these, we are asking for their cooperation in giving a peaceful environment for our spiritual practice. And this is these Shanti mantras are not used only for spiritual sadhana. Even in regular classes where they are learning secular knowledge of any kind, be it science, arts, commerce, whatever, saying these kinds of mantras helps us to focus better and get more benefit from whatever we are attending, maybe it a lecture or a class or whatever, we tend to get more benefit out of it. So I think we have completed 30 minutes, so we will bring this particular session to a stop. So the main takeaway from this, as I already told from the first session, was to identify the goal, which is that we are made out of 5 different levels, and the 4 levels are essentially our tools. We should not get identified with them. At the most, we can think of them as belonging to us, but even later we will see that, in fact, we touched upon it in the first session itself, where we said that these are just on interest-free loan from Mother Nature, and we have to give it back at the time of death. So this is essentially what this is. So definitely not identify with it. We can say at the most our mind, but even better to say the mind. It's a tool which is given to us. As long as we live, it belongs to us. We can use it whichever way we want. But we cannot take it beyond our death. So essentially, in that sense, in the long-term sense, because in really we don't have death, we don't have birth, we don't have death, our real self. And in that sense, all of these temporary things that are there are all tools given to us. So while during this particular lifetime, maybe we can call it ours, but essentially it is a loan. It's an interest-free loan which belongs to Mother Nature. So that is the first day we saw, that is the goal. And second day, which was yesterday, we saw which direction to go. We should not go outwards, we should go inwards. And today's session, we have seen in that journey why even though we know it, we have to go inwards, we are mostly going outwards, because that's how our sense organs are designed, and the main faculties we have been using is only the sense organs. We have forgotten to use the other things as much as we use these sense organs. Once we start using them also, then we will see that automatically for the spiritual practice will go inwards, and then will come outwards. Just like that dog with a leash, it goes out for its walk and then comes back home, not like the grandma who kept walking 2 kilometers every day and went away, we don't know where. So, as we move, we will see that we will get a longer and longer leash. A well-behaved, well-trained dog will have a much longer leash, and police dogs, for example, will not even have a leash, because they know in fact, they are very duty conscious, much more duty conscious than us. They'll do their duty and come back to the police home wherever they are supposed to be. So that's how well they are trained. So that's essentially how we have to train our sense organs. Very useful, beautiful things, but they should be used only when necessary, and not for things where they cannot work, for the internal practices that we are doing. So the only practice that we have learned so far is, of course, this chanting of Aum. So we will try to do that as much as possible. Whenever possible, we'll do it loudly. If we find any issue with the throat or something, we will try to reduce the volume, or even to do mentally. But essentially, observation is the most important thing to see as the sound moves. Our observation points also move through our body, and we'll do it as far as possible sitting with a vertical back, because that enables us to go against the power of gravity, and to recognize how much of energy is there in it and how easily it goes in spite of the huge gravitational power of the earth. So because as we go forward, we'll recognize this is an infinite power. No other power will come in comparison to it, which is why we call this as omnipotent, which is also a word we use to define God. We call God as omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, and eternal. Omnipresent means being everywhere. We saw already that we are an infinite sized balloon. Then omniscient means knowing everything, because these sessions are just giving a very, very simple glimpse or a small taste to it. If you go to some of these ice cream shops, they'll give a small spoon with which you taste it. It's like that, these sessions. The real thing, the real ice cream, when you buy and eat it, will be inside you. And this is just to tempt you to do that. It's so tasty, so yummy. If you love this half an hour, you will really thoroughly enjoy doing it on your own inside you. So that's essentially what we are trying to do. And so that is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, the infinite energy that we just talked about, and eternal, because this has no birth, no death, and therefore it is forever. So the same four concepts of omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, and eternal, which we use for God, is also for the self. And that is why the self and the God are one. And we in fact say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am God. And so the idea of prayer or something is only when we do a prana pratishta to an idol, that an external thing, we are putting our spiritual energy into it, praying to it, and then we are saying goodbye and we will take it back. And this is very beautifully illustrated in a festival that we will celebrate exactly a week from today. Today is 3rd September, 10th September we'll be celebrating in this year of 2021, Ganesh Chaturthi. We know we bring a Ganesh idol home, we celebrate it as if that is our only life, so much of love and joy and celebration, dancing and singing, making yummy foods for it and enjoying with it. And with the same joy on the last day, or it could be the 3rd day, 5th day, 7th day, 9th day, or 13th, 11th, or 13th day, we go and dump him into the water. And with the same joy, we are celebrating, dancing. So what does it show? It shows this exact thing, that God is nothing but nothing necessarily outside. Because it is omnipresent, it is outside also, no doubt, but more easily experienced inside. And it's that God we are putting into the Ganesha, enjoying with that Ganesha, and on the 13th day when we want to dissolve him, we are taking back that spirit into us and putting him, because that construction is just our own construction. That is the construction, preservation, and dissolution for recycling. Again, next year we construct. So that is that cycle that we have to understand. All these things not go by just the physical rituals alone. Physical rituals are beautiful only if we understand their significance. If we kept doing it in a mechanical way, many of us will, especially the very intelligent people, will slowly start moving away from it. Will say, these rituals are not for me, it's meaningless, boring, because we don't understand the significance of that. Well, as we start understanding the significance of that, we will get much more benefit of it also. Okay, so thank you so much for the wonderful time we have had together. We will meet tomorrow. Please chant Aum as much as possible before we meet. Namaskaram.